My sister is 27 and I'm 18. We lost our dad a year ago. He was our only parent as our mom was never in mine or my sister's life. Our dad left a good chunk of inheritance money for me and my sister. She instantly blew her inheritance on luxury items like new cars and renovated her house. My brother-in-law wouldn't allow me to stay with them, so I'm currently living with my aunt at her house. I want to become a doctor and haven't picked my branch yet, but I know it's going to be expensive. My sister and I haven't been close ever since she got married to her chronically ill husband who was allowed to make backhanded comments about my dad and mock his illness, then make a scene at his funeral. This was all allowed because he's ill and shouldn't be held accountable for his behavior. I've distanced myself, but recently my sister kept visiting and venting about my brother-in-law's condition. He's been in and out of the hospital for heart problems and in need for a surgery. She brought up my inheritance money several times, but I ended up cutting the conversation short whenever it was mentioned. She then straight up asked if I could help pay for her husband's surgery and she'd pay it back in less than a year. I felt uneasy because if I give her the money, then there's no guarantee she'll pay it back before it's time to pay for my tuition. I'm taking a gap year, but I know my sister can't pay that much back and I felt like it would be risking my future. When I refused to help, she had a meltdown at my aunt's house calling me heartless and cruel with no empathy. She said that her husband's health should be priority and I needed to help her because education is nothing compared to someone's health. She then asked if I'd be happy to see her as a widow and my nephew with no father. My aunt suggested others pay, but most of them cut my sister and her husband off. I argued that her husband's poor health isn't my fault after she kept blaming me and guilt-tripping me. She kept crying, and although my aunt decided to stay out of it, she said I should be prepared for permanent damage in my relationship with my sister if I don't help her now. She's been sending texts and pictures of her family telling me that this is what I'm saying no to, a happy, healthy family with a healthy husband and father. I broke down and I feel like I'm being a terrible aunt and sister. However, when I asked my friend for advice, he said that let them sell their cars and luxurious stuff they bought to afford the surgery and warned me that if I give her the money now, I'll never get it back and may not be able to go to medical school. Am I wrong for refusing to pay for my brother-in-law's surgery? Storytime about how I used to hook up with my husband's brother. A couple of years ago, my boyfriend and I were going through a rough patch. We were both doing things that bothered the other, but we would never talk about what was going on and how we felt. We slowly began to distance from each other until one day we had a fight and it was the final straw. We broke it off and I was so hurt that I stopped talking to him. It just so happened that his older brother was my best friend and I turned to him for comfort. His brother had always been very respectful and a wonderful friend to me. We spent a lot of time together without my boyfriend, which I think would bother my boyfriend and is one of the reasons that caused us to distance from each other initially. After the breakup, I started meeting up with my best friend and slowly things started to become steamy. One kiss and touch led to us going all the way in his car. We both felt very guilty the first time because I had just broken up with my boyfriend, but this tension had been building up for quite a while. We would often meet at abandoned building parking lots by my house in the middle of the night to hook up. We kept it this way for months, meeting secretly to hook up, and I could tell that he was starting to develop feelings for me, but for me it was purely physical. Around this time, I was talking to my boyfriend again about getting back together, which is what I really wanted. I talked to my best friend and asked him to promise that he would never tell anyone what we did. No one in his family could ever find out that we had this kind of relationship. He was hurt and said he couldn't promise me this. However, I got back with my boyfriend anyway. About 4 months after breaking it off with my best friend, my boyfriend and I got engaged. We mended our problems and we're happily married now with a daughter. I could tell his brother was upset and he soon started dating a girl that I think he might have been talking to when we were sneaking around. I know that having a family was all my best friend ever wanted and now his brother has that with me. Thankfully, my now husband's brother has never spoken about our steamy nights in the parking lot, but I'm always afraid he might say something one day out of spite. I met my boyfriend 5 years ago on a dating website. We met up for drinks and hit it off instantly. When I told him I didn't want children, he said he was okay with it as he didn't see himself wanting any either. This seemed perfect because it was a deal breaker in many of my previous relationships. The first few years of our relationship was great. We traveled, moved in together, and advanced in our careers. About 6 months ago, my boyfriend told me that he's had a change of heart and wants a family. He said that with COVID and him nearing 35, he's realizing that life is short and wants to be a father. I was shocked by this, but stuck with my position. He begged me to reconsider and at least think of it because he couldn't see his life without me and wanted to have that family with me. I took time to think on it, but no matter which way I put it, it wasn't something that I saw in my life. I don't think I'm responsible enough to take care of another human being besides myself, and there are so many things I want to do in my life that I'd have to put on hold if I was to have children. When I told my boyfriend my decision, I was expecting us to break up. However, he told me that he'd rather have me than have a family because he couldn't see himself with anyone else. He was adamant about this, and I believed him. I'm not on birth control because it affects me horribly, but we always use protection. I missed my period a couple of weeks ago, but they've always been irregular, so I didn't think anything of it. However, I also started having early pregnancy symptoms and decided to take a pregnancy test. It came back positive and I was shocked. I told my boyfriend and he was ecstatic. When I told him that I didn't want to keep it, he lost it. We got into a heated argument and this is when he slipped up about tampering with the rubber. Part 2. My boyfriend tried to force me to keep the baby. When he admitted to tampering with the rubber, I was shocked. He told me that he poked holes in it in hopes that I'd get pregnant and I want to keep it. I was horrified and I broke down. Not only was I pregnant when never planning on having children, but it was intentionally done by my partner who I trusted. I told him that I wasn't keeping it and that I was leaving him. This is when he started to guilt trip me and threaten me. I grew up in an extremely religious family, and this is a small reason as to why I don't want children. He knew that my parents are firmly pro-life, and my life would be a living nightmare if they ever found out that I was pregnant and didn't keep it. They always told me that if I was irresponsible enough to have an unplanned pregnancy, then I should be responsible enough to deal with the consequences of my actions. He also told me that he would fight me on it as he should have a say since he's the father. When I told him that I'd tell everyone how he tampered and set me up after knowing I didn't want children, he said that no one would believe me as I have no proof. I called my sister and told her everything. She let me move my things in with her and helped me make all the arrangements. My ex took to social media and told everyone that I was refusing refusing to keep his child, getting rid of it against his will. He also called my parents and told them the same. My sister eased the blow and helped me explain everything. Surprisingly, they understood and supported me in my decision. I cut off contact with everyone who didn't support my decision, including my ex. He showed up at my house trying to get me back and saying it was okay that I didn't want children. I shut the door in his face and threatened to call the police on him if he ever tried to contact me again. My husband is a transgender man and we've always wanted to start a family together. I have a huge fear of pregnancy, so he offered to carry the baby. It was an insane process. He had to stop taking testosterone for a long time, but he was amazing throughout the whole process, and I did everything in my power to help him feel more comfortable. None of my family know that he's transgender. They're homophobic, transphobic, all the phobics, but our friends know. He posted an ultrasound on his private Instagram, not knowing that my sister follows him on a burner account. Well, she saw the photo and told my whole family. They were furious that I wouldn't tell them. Our plan was always to say that we adopted. They assumed I was the one pregnant and blew up on me, so I just let it go and rolled with the lie because I wasn't going to out my husband. The first couple of months, I let them visit. Eventually, I'd start eating big meals and purposely bloating myself to the point of discomfort so I looked pregnant. They said around the 6-month mark that I was remarkably small, but I just played it off. Eventually, I couldn't lie any longer, so I looked for every excuse in the book not to see my family. I turned down the offers of baby showers, gender reveal parties, and anything that would require us seeing each other. Luckily, my family lives an hour away and we all live busy lifestyles, so them randomly visiting wasn't an issue. The one time they did pop in unexpectedly, we were out of the house. If they FaceTimed, I made a point to be in bed feeling horribly sick so I couldn't give the bump update. I lied my ass off and they just thought that I had a rough pregnancy. My husband gave birth a year ago and went straight back on testosterone, and now we're happy as ever. My family have met our daughter and they adore her. However, a week ago, after an argument between myself and a friend, said friend decided to out my husband by messaging my family and included proof. They did it by adding everybody to a group chat, posting screenshots and basically the whole story, then saying, "I'll leave you all to discuss." Then they left the chat and blocked me and my husband. In a transphobic rage, my mother raced to my home and all but beat my front door down. I had to call the cops. I've been disowned, but that hasn't stopped the daily calls and texts coming from my parents, aunts, uncles, siblings, and etc. They've been leaving nasty transphobic slurs on my voicemail and other hateful crap. I ended up crying to my friend yesterday who told me that I should have been honest with my family as it would have saved me a lot of heartache. That, or we said we miscarried, then adopted later. I'm not happy things played out the way they did. I just feel so sad now. Was I wrong to lie to my family in order to protect my husband? I'm 17 and my sister's 34. She called me saying that her work had an emergency and she needs to get there ASAP and needed me to watch her kids because no one else can. I rushed over there just to find her husband locked in his game room playing video games. I asked her why she called me over if he was home, and she said that he didn't want to babysit because it was his only day off. She left and I started hanging out with the kids. I was changing the baby's diaper and the other kids wanted a snack. I told them to go ask their dad to make them a snack since the baby had a blowout and it was going to take me a while to clean him up. Well, their dad sent them back upstairs and told them to ask me again. After cleaning the baby up, I made the kids a snack and their dad came out to eat and told me not to let the kids interrupt him on his day off. By the way, he works part-time from home 6 days a week. I kind of snapped at him and told him it was my day off too and he's a useless effing father and a husband if his wife has to rely on his teenage sister rather than her own husband. He started telling me that I was disrespectful and didn't understand how hard parenting is. That's when I told him that he clearly doesn't understand how hard it is either since he considers parenting his own children as babysitting. He ended up kicking me out and apparently my sister was forced to come home because he told her that she needed to figure it out since I'm her sister. I feel like I may be the a-hole because my sister is mad at me, her husband is mad at me, and my mom is mad at me for causing the drama, but my dad thinks it's funny and he agrees with me. I definitely didn't need to call him names, but I just hate this guy so much. My sister is saying I need to apologize to him and he's threatening to never let me into the kids' lives if I keep disrespecting him. However, he doesn't take care of the kids normally. My sister takes him to daycare during the day and then picks them up on her way home. She's the breadwinner and primary caretaker. Apparently, he texted my sister and told her a much different story of what happened. He told her I was sitting on my phone the whole time being lazy and the kids kept begging me for a snack. Am I wrong for calling my sister's husband useless and should I apologize? I met my boyfriend 7 months ago and we made it official 4 months ago. When we first started seeing each other, he told me that he had slept with his girl best friend, who he's known for less than a year. I was fine with it because it was before we met, but it was a bit uncomfortable for me. Seeing her all the time and watching them interact together was annoying. They're quite playful, always making fun of each other jokingly, making inside jokes in front of me, and sometimes it made me feel like I wasn't even there. However, at the end of the day, I had no real reason to be mad. A couple months in, I found out that they used to cuddle together in bed and fall asleep together as well as the one time that they slept together. That made me feel weird because in my opinion, it's more intimate than just hooking up. He told me that they were both in a bad place and it was just for comfort, but I was still put off by it. I kept my feelings about their friendship to myself because I wanted to like her and not make things difficult for my boyfriend, but she wanted to be really good friends with me. Oddly, one night she invited me to have drinks with her. It was all fine until she told me a couple details about when they slept together and then told me about his ex without me even asking. I brushed it off at the time, but now it's crossed my mind a few times and I'm livid. I don't understand why anyone would do that. I finally told my boyfriend that I didn't like their friendship and asked him to be cautious of how he interacts with her when I'm there, but didn't tell him the details of what happened. I told him not to tell her because I didn't want her to hate me, but he went and told her anyway. I felt that further proved my point that he put her before me. Her response was that I have no reason to be uncomfortable and she doesn't understand at all why I would feel this way because their friendship is completely normal. I felt like she completely dismissed my feelings and I don't understand how she thinks I'm overreacting. Wouldn't anyone be uncomfortable in my shoes? So I unfollowed her on social media. I started thinking about it a lot again last night and my blood started to boil so much that I ended up ranting to my boyfriend about everything. Obviously there's a small bit of jealousy, but why does he have to be best friends with her? He hasn't even known her a long time, and why does a photo of them have to be in his profile pic? Whenever I think deeply about it, it makes me push him away. The image of them hooking up makes me want to puke, but now I have all these details that I didn't ask for. She's still his best friend, so there's no real solution. To be clear, I never asked him to stop being friends with her, and I never would. I just feel so uncomfortable with them being best friends, not only because they've slept together, but because I feel like she's been so disrespectful towards me. I don't want to break up with him over this because I know there's actually nothing there between them and he loves me a lot. He's actually quite worried right now because I'm not speaking to him. He was very understanding when I told him how I felt the first time, and he said that he'd feel the exact same way if he was in my position. Then he asked if it was a make or break for me. When I told him I don't know, he got very worried. Am I overreacting about this situation? My biological mother died giving birth to me. When I was 4, my dad married my stepmom. I've always called her a mom and I love her so much. She's super smart, successful, confident, and beautiful. I always wanted to be like her when I got older. I'm not great in school and I struggle to remember to do chores. I also get distracted easily and sometimes fight with my siblings. I've really struggled even though I want to do good. My older stepbrother gets straight A's though, and my mom is proud of that. Last night, I couldn't fall asleep. It was really late and I went to go get something to drink when I heard my parents arguing. I know it's wrong, but they never fight, so I listened in. My stepmom was basically complaining about my grades and saying that I'm not good enough. My dad told her that I was improving, went from failing to B's and C's. She said it wasn't good enough comparing me to my stepbrother. My dad essentially said that some kids find it easier and that I've been trying really hard. And I have. I've been studying and trying to pay attention even when it's boring. I study more than him even though I get worse grades, and it's all because I wanted to meet her standards. She said it wasn't enough and that my dad was being soft on me. He got annoyed and said that I'm studying a lot more than my brother and a teenager needs some time to relax, but she didn't agree. Apparently, I shouldn't relax if I'm not doing well enough to deserve it. My stepmom went on to say that I'm a selfish, entitled brat and that my dad needs to step up and teach me better. She said it's bad enough that I suck at school, but I can't even do housework right. She said that their children, my stepbrother and half siblings, are doing great and well behaved. It's just his daughter that's a screw up. I honestly admired her so much, so hearing all of this shattered me. I love my dad and I was glad he was proud in defending me, but I really loved her. I considered her as my mother and my role model. My dad got angry at her and kept defending me, saying how much I love and admire her, so she should be proud of me and love me the way he does. However, she said that she raised me because I was his daughter and that she had to. She continued saying that I'm lucky, that I'm pretty because I won't amount to anything just like my biological mother. After this, I didn't listen anymore. My dad was in a bad mood today but didn't tell us why. I just cried in my bed. I wanted to be like her, but I'm just a failure in her eyes and she doesn't even see me as a daughter. She acts so kind and caring towards me but said all those terrible things. Am I doing something wrong even though I've been trying my best? My biological 12-year-old daughter, Susan, likes to collect and read old children's books. She used to have problems with reading and learning before, and we were advised to encourage her to read more. Ever since she started reading, which she does regularly, her skills have improved. She also reads to her 2-year-old sister every night. I have a 16-year-old stepson, Levi, who can be a hothead sometimes. We don't have a close relationship, but I respect him and he respects me, though he can act quite mean and selfish towards me and his sisters. He throws away stuff that belongs to us over small arguments and teases Susan for spending a lot of time reading, calling her a grandma. My wife and I discussed his behavior and agreed on punishments, but Levi would go to his dad's place whenever he causes trouble, then have his dad yell at me for wanting to discuss a suitable punishment. Then Levi comes home days later expecting me to let go of what he did every time, and it's frustrating. I got a call at work from Susan saying Levi took her entire book collection and threw them in the pool after she refused to lend him and his friends her camera for his trip. My wife helped get them out, but they were wet and some were torn. It was horrific because some of those books are hard to get and meant a lot to Susan as part of her life. I was so mad at Levi I came home to have a conversation with my wife to decide on a punishment, but he had already packed a small bag and went to his dad's. I asked my wife how she could let him basically run after doing this, and she said that he called his dad and he came to pick him up after Susan said that I was coming home to deal with the problem. When I went to his dad's house, he refused to let me see him. I told him how Levi was hiding from consequences and his dad tried to justify why Levi was acting out by blaming me for how me and Susan treat him. He even said he'd get CPS involved if I ever try to punish him because I'm not his biological parent and I have no right. He also added that what Levi did was a reaction to my daughter being mean to him. He told me to leave because Levi won't come home until I promise not to do anything about it and put it in writing. That's when I told him that Levi should stay there with him then. He's not to come back until he gets a proper punishment. His dad argued it's his mom's house too and called my wife. She asked me to let it go and we find another resolution, but I don't think it's fair to Susan to have her books ruined and Levi getting away with it. They're asking me to let it go, but this will only encourage Levi to do worse if I don't deal with it now. It's now been 2 weeks and my in-laws say that I was out of line for banning Levi from coming home and are telling me to take a step back, but I refused. I've arranged for family therapy, but Levi's dad refused to let him go. In the past, his dad has caused issues when I used to take Levi's electronics as a punishment. Then I got talked out of punishing him every time he did something unacceptable, whether it was to me or his sisters. Am I wrong for refusing to let him come home without punishment?